What if the perfect car didn't save you, but quietly signed your death warrant? Imagine spending years chasing an idea no one else believed in, ignoring trends, ignoring shortcuts, ignoring what sells easily, and instead, building a car that feels heavier, safer, calmer, almost defiant, a car that sits lower than anything else on the road, a car that doesn't wobble, doesn't sway, doesn't feel nervous, a car that behaves like it understands physics better than its rivals. Now imagine winning with it. Beating faster engines, beating bigger brands, beating cars that should have crushed you on paper, and still losing everything. When Hudson vanished in the late 1950s, it didn't fail loudly. There was no final hero model, no dramatic collapse, just silence. A name erased from dealership signs, a factory that stopped building cars, and an industry that moved on as if Hudson had never mattered. But Hudson mattered more than most people realize. Long before safety ratings existed, before unibody construction became standard, before low center of gravity became a buzzword, Hudson had already solved problems the rest of Detroit hadn't even acknowledged yet. And that is exactly why they didn't survive. To understand Hudson's end, you have to start near its peak, not with its beginning. In the early 1950s, American racing was ruled by brute force, big V8 South, tall cars, raw horsepower overpowering grip. NASCAR was less about finesse and more about intimidation. If your engine was louder, bigger, and meaner, you belonged at the front. Hudson didn't get the memo. Instead of chasing V8 headlines, Hudson arrived with something that looked outdated on paper, a straight six engine, long, heavy, quiet, almost stubbornly conservative. But once the green flag dropped, everything changed. While V8 cars fought their own way through corners, Hudson stayed flat. While others lifted off to survive uneven tracks, Hudson drivers stayed planted. The car didn't dance, it didn't slide. It pressed itself into the pavement like it refused to let go. Between 1951 and 1953, Hudson won races at a rate that embarrassed the competition, not because it was faster in a straight line, but because it didn't waste motion. It didn't fight physics, it worked with it. Drivers described the feeling as unnatural, as if the car had more grip than the road itself should allow. This dominance wasn't accidental. It was the result of decisions Hudson had been making for decades. Long before NASCAR trophies, long before post-war optimism, Hudson had already chosen its path. In the early days of the automobile, most manufacturers treated cars like furniture with engines, tall bodies, flexible frames, comfort built on softness. Strength was often sacrificed for cost. Hudson went the opposite direction. From its earliest models, Hudson overbuilt everything. Thicker steel, stronger frames, engines designed to run smoothly rather than loudly. Where competitors chased price points, Hudson chased confidence. Their engineers believed something radical for the time. If a car felt solid, customers would trust it even if it cost more. That philosophy reached its most extreme form after World War II. When the war ended, America wanted new cars immediately. Most manufacturers responded by dusting off pre-war designs, adding chrome, and calling it progress. It worked. People were desperate to buy anything new. Hudson refused. Instead, they bet everything on an idea that made accountants nervous and engineers proud. The floor went down, literally, rather than placing the body on top of the frame like every other American car. Hudson dropped the floor between the frame rails. You didn't step into the car, you stepped down into it. Passengers sat inside the structure, not above it. This single decision changed everything. The car could be lower without shrinking the cabin, wider without looking bulky, heavier without feeling clumsy. The center of gravity dropped naturally, without tricks, without compromises. The result wasn't just a different-looking car, it was a different-feeling car. At highway speeds, Hudson's felt calm when others felt nervous. In corners, they leaned less. In emergency maneuvers, They stayed upright when others threatened to roll. In an era before crash testing, Hudson accidentally built one of the safest cars on the road. Sales exploded. Factories ran at capacity. Profits climbed. The brand carried a quiet confidence, not flashy, not loud, but deeply assured. And yet, beneath that success, the seeds of collapse were already planted. The very structure that made Hudson special also made it inflexible. Every Hudson body was essentially a single massive steel shell. Changing it wasn't cheap. It required new stamping dies, new tooling, and enormous capital. Hudson couldn't afford yearly styling changes. General Motors and Ford could. They didn't need better cars. They needed newer-looking ones. Every year, tail fins grew. Grills changed. Headlights moved. Underneath, the engineering barely evolved, but customers believed they were buying the future. Hudson, meanwhile, kept selling excellence that looked familiar. And familiarity became a problem. Then came the price war. In the early 1950s, Ford and GM decided market share mattered more than profit. They slashed prices, absorbed losses, and used sheer scale as a weapon. For Hudson, this was fatal. They didn't have the volume to bleed money. Every car had to earn its keep. There was no cushion, no corporate safety net. So Hudson tried to adapt, and this is where belief finally cracked. The Hudson Jet was supposed to save them. Smaller, cheaper, competitive. Instead, it erased everything Hudson stood for. Tall proportions replaced low confidence. Narrow stance replaced planted stability. The car worked mechanically, but emotionally, it felt wrong. Customers didn't want Hudson to be ordinary. Sales collapsed. By the time Hudson merged with Nash, the identity was already gone. The cars that followed wore Hudson badges, but they weren't Hudsons anymore. When the final Hudson rolled off the line in 1957, there were no speeches, no commemorative editions, just another day in Detroit. But Hudson didn't disappear completely. Its idea survived. Today, nearly every car uses a form of unitized construction. Low centers of gravity are celebrated. Stability is engineered, not optional. Safety is structural, not decorative. Hudson was right, just too early. And that may be the most dangerous thing an automaker can be, because in this industry, being better has never guaranteed survival. Timing does. Hudson built cars for the future, and paid the price for arriving there alone. So, when you see a Hudson sitting low, wide, and calm, remember this wasn't a failure of engineering. It was a failure of patience, and maybe that's the real lesson. Sometimes the world ain't ready for the best idea in the room. If you could preserve one forgotten engineering masterpiece, would it be a Hudson Hornet or something louder, faster, and less honest? Let me know in the comments, and if stories like this matter to you, stay with the channel. There are many more ghosts in automotive history waiting to be heard.